and welcome to UPfront. Today, review the president's first day in office. He actually had a media encounter today. We'll put a spotlight on this media encounter. Some 40 questions, a prelude, which actually set the background for this engagement, which was within like 30 minutes, telling the people of this republic what is achieved in the last full year of his administration as president of the Republic of Ghana. We'll put a spotlight also on the things you didn't get to hear from this particular encounter and get to interrogate the issues and probe further on this particular day's edition of UPfront. My name is Raymond Aqua. After this break, I'll tell you who my guest is and we can continue our conversation. You're welcome back. This is UPfront, and my guest is from the Office of the Vice President. He's an economic advisor there. Dr. Gideon Boako is actually supposed to help us appreciate exactly what the president said from all the perspectives. So the questions we couldn't ask the president directly, he is very much competent and qualified to actually help us appreciate this particular issue more. He speaks for the vice president anyway, in virtually all the capacities, and we understand that the vice president's quotes were also part of the important statement the president used today. Doc, you're welcome to UPfront.
Thank you, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing very great. Hope you are doing well.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been a long time. The last time we had this engagement was when we're reviewing the 6 months, of the president's stay in office. And, of course, during the 6 months, there was a similar engagement with the media, which you had to come and give us some perspective on. Let's start with how the day went for you. To many, it wasn't as long as we wanted it to be, and the journalists were complaining about why they didn't get a chance to ask, all of them ask the questions that they wanted to ask, since they hardly get this chance anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much, Raymond, for having me, and I'm also glad to be on your show, and good evening to our viewers. Yes, today is an important day for Ghana and the presidency because the president had made a promise to journalists somewhere last year when he had his first encounter with you, where he said that he would try as much as possible to meet the Ghanaian media at least twice in a year. So roughly, the thinking is that the president will meet you somewhere in January and then July every year. And so the president, in keeping with his promise, decided to meet the journalists today. Yes, like you rightly said, the president did not have to touch on all the areas that he ought to touch, bearing in mind that in some few weeks to come, the president will be delivering the State of the Nation address. So technically, you wouldn't want to put out everything for the 1 year, more or less take a stock of what happened in the year 2017, because the president will also have the second opportunity at the State of the Nation address to expatiate and expound on most of the things that took place in 2017. That is why perhaps you may see this address not to have taken the length that usually such encounters take. And also, yes, not all media men had the opportunity. In any case, not all were going to have the opportunity, but some have expressed the view.
So
that
what were the huge numbers? For example, why was anybody be called from the Ashanti region and not be given the opportunity to ask the question?
Well, I think this is something that was opened, and you, for instance, you had the right to attend. I saw a lot of people from multimedia who also
I was not invited. There were people who were directly invited.
Multimedia was invited, and rightly so, you would have brought a representative. I saw a few of your colleagues around. And so for such an occasion, everybody would wish to
Only one person got the opportunity to ask a question.
Ask a question or whatever, but not all. Yes, I also listened to the Minister for Information, and he was very straightforward in his opening remarks, where he said that multimedia, for instance, is a very big organization. You have so many stations under you, and so if we say that we're going to do one-on-one, multimedia, for instance, is going to have about 10 or so, and others may be deprived of the opportunity to ask the president questions. So he tried to manage the situation in such a way that he will please others and satisfy others. But of course, not everything can be done in a day. And so I think that one is understandable. On the whole,
I mean, but they are not excited by it. I mean, there are so many media men who felt that they were robbed of the opportunity of being able to ask the question. For example, media that's deemed to be opposition, Muntie, Radio Gold, nobody asked a question from any of these institutions.
Oh,
mindful of the fact that in previous engagements they were not invited at all.
No, so the good thing is that this time around they were invited, and so there seemed to be some positive change You understand? From the previous norm, even in the era of the previous government, it used to be that media men who were seen to be anti the ruling government were not invited. But President Akufo-Addo invited everybody. But the other thing is that I saw Kwesi Pratt ask a question. And in fact, the president insisted and invited Kwesi Pratt to ask a question at a point where he had raised his hands, but he was not catching the eye of the moderator. The president said, my good friend, you need to bring Kwesi Pratt to ask me a question. And so it is not as if the president is averse to people who are seen to be anti his ideology or political party. There's a president who is a media-friendly person, is open to everybody. And I have said, President Akufo-Addo is like a competent lecturer in the lecture hall teaching. Insofar as he understands the content of the course he's teaching, it doesn't matter the person coming to ask the question, whether he's a professor or he's a first degree holder. Once he has the answers, he's open to that. So the president would have wished, even when the minister had said that there's a last batch of questions, he had to later ask him to open it up to 5 more people to come in. So if time was not in short supply at that time, the president would have wished that everybody would have asked a question. But the brevity of time did not allow for that. And so we have to make do with that. It happens all the time. You do your programs, you open phone lines, text messages. You don't read every text message. But every listener would want to send a text message to you. So that is the situation. That is how circumstances can define your boundaries and your limits. In this particular case, we had time being the ultimate decider of who and who has the opportunity to ask questions.
I want us to look at the general evaluation of the questions. I mean, because I'm not asking you to tell us journalists that we don't ask good questions. I'm not saying that, to your mind, was the most important issues touched on?
For me, having just moved from the lecture hall to government, I mean, as a lecturer, when I was in the classroom, I never treated any question from any of my students as most excellent or quote-unquote stupid. Every question everybody asks, there's a reason why that person asked that question, no matter how useless you may see that question to be. Sometimes questions that are noted to be useless and out of board elicit the most important responses to educate people and to nourish the minds of others. And so for me, I wouldn't treat any of the questions and the comments that came as tangential, not necessary. Sometimes, as I come to your show, you would want to do something to whet my appetite for the show to take a great footing and then move. And so somebody will say, oh, Mr. President, I like your shirt. It is nice. That is how...
But that's praise singing. I mean...
No, it is not.
No journalist worth his salt will be engaged in praise singing when you've been sent there to go and probe a matter.
Hey, my brother, you meet me on daily basis.
Yes.
I say, hey, Gideon, I like this, your traditional wear. Then I say, I like your tie. It is not praise singing. I'm giving you remarks. In fact, admiration without evil intent is no sin. Okay? So
that's interesting.
Exactly. So you have to admire people where you ought to do. And that is not the question the person asked. If the person had gone there and said, President, I like your shirt, I am done, then you could say, that is praise singing. The person needed to catch the attention of the person who is going to interview. You catch the person's attention, then you follow up with your question. That's ethics in your profession. I'm not a journalist, but the little public speaking that I did simply suggests to me that you need to do some of these things to build up friendly relationship, catch the attention of the person you're going to speak with, whet the appetite of the person, endear the person to you, and then you follow up with your question. And so all those things spice up the whole thing. Kwesi Pratt had the opportunity to say, Mr. President, I just want to ask half a question. You understand? All of that spice up the whole situation and the whole system and makes the place so lovely. It is not a matter of the ancient old days professor who comes to sit at the panel and is looking so, you know, like an elephant. Everybody is afraid of the person. That should not be the situation. The president is a friendly person. Even when he was asked, given the opportunity to sit down, he said, hey, I want to stand. This is President Akufo-Addo for you. On the occasion, you get him to do things that the ordinary person expects him to do. Okay, that is
so
exactly
let me understand clearly what the intent for this gathering was and whether you think it was achieved.
Yes, so the president, like I said, in keeping with his principle to run transparent, accountable government, decided last year when he met the press that he wants to make himself available to the Ghanaian media as often as possible although he has the presidential press corps, it is not everybody who has the opportunity to be drafted into the presidential press corps. And so the president wants to interact with the people of Ghana, but it's either he going down to do town hall meetings and all of that, or using another strategy to say that, hey, the media, you are the ears of the people. People speak to you on a daily basis. You interact with people on the streets. I want to engage with the Ghanaian people through you. And that is perfect. That is exactly what he decided to do today. Okay. And by doing so, he has to tell you about what he's done as a government, where he's going, what he came to meet, and all of that. It's quite general.
Okay, so that's interesting. Do you think this particular objective was achieved?
Perfectly. It was perfectly achieved.
Really?
From my stance, it was. Unless you have other wise
when less than 1/3 of the people who gathered there were able to ask the questions.
Look.
When the media houses, some of them did not get a chance to ask the questions at all.
Look.
When people very disappointed, I mean, in how the turnout of events were. Indeed, they were not expecting that every member of their media house would be asking questions, but some were worried that there was no representation at all in this particular case. And does that not bring down the intent and also water down the effect of this particular event?
Let me put it this way. The most competitive examination is not the one with numerous questions, but the one that comes with most relevant questions. That's the most important. So the multiplicity or the plethora of questions that everybody wanted to ask is not the issue. The fact is that the president made himself available. People had the opportunity to ask the president questions that people on the street have been asking. And the president had the opportunity to respond to them. Even if the president had allotted to himself the whole day, nobody, all of us couldn't have exhausted the questions that
actually the whole day, all the journalists could have asked the questions. They were not.
How about the people on the street?
Now, I mean, of course, they were not the ones invited to this particular press conference.
You see, now you are discriminating.
I want us to go to the meat of this engagement. And first and foremost, the president started by giving us the job scenario, citing the example of the Ghana Immigration Service and the reality on the grounds. But instructively, when the president was asked to state the figures specifically, number of jobs created, how that matches against what they call it, the unemployment situation in Ghana, he couldn't. He said data was being collated. I do recall that during the half-year event, the president said it is too early for that question to be brought up, and they should wait till the end of the year, and that could even be done. How come we are still unable to get this particular question answered?
Yes, perhaps the president's position has been informed by some of us opinion that we give in the opportunities that we get to meet with the top people. I think I was here with you some time ago, and the issue of data and all of that came to play.
I'm actually going to ask you again.
Yeah, and
if the president doesn't know, you should know.
I will not be able to tell you anything because look, 3 days ago we were at the University of Ghana for the New Year school. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, in his address, quoted something to represent the unemployment situation in Ghana, I think 12% or so.
Yeah.
I have read from the International Labour Organization, the World Bank, and different organizations, giving different figures. The question that we ought to ask...
But won't you rely on your labor force survey?
That is where I'm coming to.
Yes.
As a country, do we have a robust system that is able to track employment and the unemployment and the labor force in this country? We don't. As we speak today.
No, okay.
The Ghana Statistical Service has some figures to talk about people who have been employed, people who have not been employed. But even in your case, if I ask you to define what you mean by those who are employed, we're talking about those in the public sector. How about those who are going to the private sector? Nobody captures them.
No, actually, they are captured in the service.
And so service.
Yes, the Ghana Statistical Service, the labor force survey. Actually, the SIT one is out there. Yes, and it's pretty clear on.
You see, the point is that.
But government should know that the labor force survey was done primarily because of at the instance of government.
How long has that survey taken? For how long? We don't have current month-to-month employment data. That is why the president told you that.
Yes.
In the case of the unemployment, even today the figure has changed.
I get your
Tomorrow
point.
the figure changes.
But
so
interestingly,
the president
in the last 6 months,
very careful.
The president in the last 1 year has on several occasions quoted not figures but situations that represent the unemployment.
Exactly.
For example, when the president says that the unemployment situation, majority of our youth are unemployed, how does he come back that particular figure?
He comes by that particular figure because in Ghana, you don't need statistics to tell you the level of unemployment.
But the president cannot be speaking without factual evidence.
Listen, you get to the streets today and you hold a megaphone and shout, those who are unemployed, raise up your hand. You see it yourself. So but
that's not how we determine
the unemployment problem in this country. It's not much about statistics. Let's get it right. Fanciful statistics, this is there. But the most important thing is that the survey you are talking about.
Mindful of your background, you should not be the one downplaying the importance of data in this particular case.
I'm not downplaying. What I'm saying is that you don't need statistics.
Yeah.
Get me right. You don't need statistics for you to be able to say that majority of the young people in this country are unemployed. That is where I'm coming from.
All of the data from as far back as 96 does not support that claim.
Now, we need the statistics to actualize, to give credence to what we say. But for that statistics to be effective, it should not be a 2-year lag statistics. It should not be a 5-year lag statistics. It should be a month-on-month statistics. And that is why I have been advocating.
When your economy is predominantly informal.
That is why we have to formalize the economy. That
so
is the
until we formalize the economy.
No, that is the biggest problem. Today, the Ghana Statistical Service cannot give you month-on-month data on unemployment. Quarterly data, they cannot. That is why in my private conversation, perhaps you are not privy to that, I have been fighting that greater resources ought to be channeled to the agencies and the institutions that can have the capacity to collect data, unemployment data, on month-on-month basis. We need to do that because, look, that data is so crucial for planning, for government decisions, for policy. Because if you are bringing a policy to, say, create 100,000 jobs, you need to know what category of the structure of society will benefit from the benefit. That
I agree perfectly with you.
And for me, I am all for it.
It is interesting to note that we don't have this. Yet government has put in place what it considers to be a very wonderful plan to deal with the unemployment situation.
Yeah, so it appears we are all behaving as if we know something, but we don't know. Yeah, and that makes it dangerous.
Yes, that's
because
what my difficulty
we behave and do our policies as if we know the actual unemployment situation in the country.
So we intend to put together a national builders call, which would actually generate employment for over 100,000 young people in this republic. The basis for the 100,000 is not known to anybody. Is it not so?
The basis for 100,000, what do you mean?
Yes, I mean the basis for choosing the figure 100,000 and not 150, 110,000 or even 80,000.
I think it's a matter of capacity.
Okay, just capacity.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Not based on the need.
Other factors may come in, but basically it's a matter of capacity.
Okay.
Government cannot just get up today and say, I'm creating 1 million jobs.
Certainly.
When your budget cannot support that. You also have to be careful to live within your budget so that you don't get spillovers into huge deficit. So that's very important. Other factors may come to play, and like you are saying, we ought to get a figure so that we can do needs assessment. Very, very crucial. Yeah. And I am all for data. And even today, we are working on some data issues for Ghana. So we have developed what we call IMAT, Interagency Modeling Team. And we have been meeting. We had our last meeting in Peduase. It's something that young people in government, myself, Dr. Ishmael Aka of Ministry of Planning, Professor Joe Makutufo, we sat down together, brought people from finance, brought the auditor, the Ghana Statistical Service, brought people from the academia, somebody from KNUST, people from ISA, people from Legon, young guys, and then we have taken it upon ourselves. And we got support from DFID through GOGIC. And we are saying that Statistical Service, let's sit down, let's see how best we can build data for this country. And some few months ago, I was in Switzerland to meet with a lot of people and technical people on how best we can structure and improve our data system. Because I use data for my profession. Without data, as an academic, I'm nobody. And so I have been fighting that we need to make sure that data collection and gathering in this country is boosted to the level that is acceptable by everybody.
But if the president cannot tell us the unemployment rate in the country, he sure should be able to tell us the number of jobs he has created.
I don't think the president said he cannot. You know.
Oh, he said they were collating the data?
Yes, he's the president.
Of course, and he couldn't.
You wouldn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, your president, to come and give out a figure. That technically has not been rationalized by all the agencies involved. And mind you, when we're talking about this data, the Minister of Employment has something to say. The Ghana Statistical Service has something to say. other agencies have something to say. You need to be sure as a president that all the people have come to one point and agreed that this is the data we're talking about. Perhaps sometimes you need some data for something. Finance will give you something. Then controller will tell you that, oh, wait, we are doing this validation. When we are done, we'll give you the total figure. So as a president, he has to be careful what he puts out.
Okay.
I can put anything out. The university professor can put anything out. But as the president, once he comes out, that is what you and I are going to take. And so he has to be circumspect in that. And I think that is prudently what the president
And I would interrogate data on this show too. But let me ask you this particular question. I was asking about the unemployment fee, the number of jobs that have been created.
Yeah.
Do we know? Because he said after a year he should be able to tell us that.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that. For all you know, the president may even want to say it at another forum. Because, you know, somebody asked a question, say, hey, this question, I'm even going to the place you are talking about on the 20th.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm going to talk about the details of it.
So because he promised during the mid-year that end year he will say it.
It doesn't mean that the end year, the information he needs has been supplied. You understand? So he's the president. And until I got into government, I didn't know that you ought to be careful what you put out. You have to make sure sometimes these figures will have to be reconciled with the agencies involved. So as a president, he needed to be cautious and be careful and make sure that he's gotten the adequate briefing. And you journalists would have come out to say that, Mr. President, why you didn't get proper briefing? Because what you said that you got from Statistical Service, the Minister of Employment is also saying different things. There ought to be that reconciliation and for the president to be cocksure of what he says before he puts it out. And for me, I think that is the perfect response. I
get your point, but let me actually ask this question. The president talked about inflation and said that inflation for December 2017 was 11.8%. Of course, that's true. But the query is about the December 2016 figure, which he mentioned to be 15.6%. I mean, the Statistical Service in their release says it's 15.4%.
Yeah, I know 15.4.
Yes, so how come he mentioned 15.6%?
Is that what is in the speech?
Yes, that's what's in the speech.
I know it's 15.4.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I was confused about this particular difference between what was said then and what was released.
And that is exactly what was in the budget. So I don't think...
yes. I mean, I saw it in the budget too.
Yeah, so there might be a typo or whatever. Yeah. The president is clear in his mind that it's 15.4.
Really?
Yeah.
But he said a different.
No, but you know, I mean, sometimes when
there was another issue, and I also heard that the president was right when he mentioned that the provisional third quarter GDP for 2017 is actually 9.3. The only difficulty was that he quoted 3.5 for the same period in 2016.
3.5.
But again, yes. But again, when you check the Statistical Service, what they call it, figures, it doesn't seem to connive with that particular one. Indeed, if you check the December released provisional GDP for the third quarter, the real GDP was quoted at 4.6 and not 3.5 as the president put out there.
So for September 2016?
Yes. I'm actually talking about, you know, in December, the Statistical Service released the third quarter provisional figures, of course, and it quotes directly what was the figure for 2016 and said 4.6 and not 3.5.
Third quarter 2016?
Yes, and said 4.6 and not 3.5.
Well, we need to verify because even in the 2018 budget, the quarter two, okay, I have quarter two for 2016, which is 2.7.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that this was released in December, 20th of December. They did their presentation, and it was at the same forum that they brought up what the latest figures on what they call it, GDP for that period.
Yeah.
And this is what it states, and I'm quoting directly. It said, the provisional 2017 quarter three real GDP, including oil, grew by 9.3 year on year, compared to 4.6 recorded for 2016 quarter three.
Yeah.
And it proceeds to say the non-oil provisional GDP grew by 5.9 year on year, compared to 4.6 for the same period as in 2016. Indeed, it says quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted 2017 GDP grew by 2.5 compared to 2.0. I mean, to be fair, the president was right that the figures are higher than what happened in 2016.
Exactly.
But I am worried about why his figure is lower than what is being quoted by the Statistical Service.
I don't usually debate figures like that. So, I mean, we need to interrogate. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Okay. Yeah. We can move to the other issues that the president mentioned. There is a talk about stability in the area of exchange rate, but the reality doesn't support that.
What is the reality?
The reality really is that the dollar is actually losing a lot against the cedi. The cedi is losing a lot against the dollar. If you do the same thing with the pound, it's even worse. Pound is trending 6 cedi and more.
And the cedi have what?
The cedi against the dollar.
Yeah.
Actually, the last time I checked, it was 443.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the president was talking about, I think, November 20. The analysis we've done so far, as was contained in the budget, was up to November 2016.
Okay.
You understand? Up to November 2016.
November 2016.
Exactly. And that was 4.4, as you can find from the Bank of Ghana
I agree.
tables.
For example, I'm actually looking at the summary of macroeconomic and financial data from the Bank of Ghana. In November 2016, it was actually, well, it depreciated by negative 4.7. But if you check it against the November 2017, it was negative 4.6. I mean, the difference is there. My only thinking is that check it from the year. In March, it was negative 2.7. It went down to negative
2.7?
Yes, negative.
You're talking about the depreciation?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Then it went to 3.7, then 3.9, 4.5, 4.0, 4.0, and 4.4. Now it's 4.6, as in the November one you referenced. The figure is...
It cannot be 4.6.
Negative 4.6. That's
you're talking about the depreciation. Yeah, so,
yes.
so
I'm talking about.
I don't think it's a big issue here. I think relatively, that is why we talk about the relative stability. The exchange rate has been relatively stable. I mean, from January, 4.2 or so. In fact, the artificial one was around 4.7, 4.8. You understand? Then it started coming down. But I know the election pressures and everything shot the exchange rate. There was some kind of overshooting in the exchange rate. And so the artificial one, but what was officially recorded is around 4.2. So if you juxtapose 4.2 as the beginning of the year to 4.4 by the end of the year, just a 0.2 difference. I think that is remarkable.
My only difficulty is that the vice president told us that he's arrested the cedi and put it under lock and key,
and you don't appreciate
and given the key to the IGP.
No, you don't appreciate.
It looks like it is no longer under the control of the vice president's lock.
No, it is.
Really?
You don't appreciate the exchange rate moving from 4.2 to 4.4 within 12 months. That is good. We would wish that it reduces, but the rate of increase...
We wish that that appreciates against the dollar.
That is fine. But from 4.2 to 4.4 within 12 months, I don't think it is so much an issue. Government is still working to make sure that the trend reverses. If it reverses, the better for us. But I think that if it goes the same way, we may end 2020 without the exchange rate even getting to 4.9 or 5. And that is something we need to sustain.
The pound is worse off. Whilst it was appreciating, the cedi was appreciating against the pound in the same period, that's November 2016, by 13.1%. It's actually depreciating by 11.3%.
Yeah, the pound has always been volatile. I mean, in that respect. And if you want to do exchange rate pair against exchange rate pair, you can see that sometimes even the dollar that we think about does not depreciate so much as some of the other. The cedi does not depreciate against the dollar as some of the other currencies. And that is something we all need to help government to work at. You understand?
You're still talking about speculation and the related matters.
Oh, I mean, the exchange rate is exposed to so many external factors. There's exogenous factors.
They say that when you say you have macroeconomic stability and you actually are running a system that the exchange rate would expose you. Is it one of the situations happening now?
I don't think so. That is why, because the exchange rate has not so much depreciated against the major trading currencies, that's why the other fundamentals are really working. GDP growth, external balances and all of that improving. And so we as a government, we're working towards that. We need to find a strategy, as has been laid down, to make sure that we urge the government on, and government is able to sustain the trend. Like I said, if it is going to be 0.2, 0.2, 0.2 addition, we may end 2020 with a very good stable currency, relative to what we used to experience in the past, where the rate of depreciation was increasing at an increasing rate. The exchange rate market is such that you can have the jumps and then the drops as it happen, but it ought to operate within a certain band. Okay. And so insofar as it is within a certain acceptable optimal band, the juggles may happen, you understand. The shocks and the stochastic processes may be going on. But once it does not exceed the band, you have to manage it like that, because no currency stays as it is for so long a time. There are rise and falls. It's a rise and fall situation. But it must operate within a certain acceptable and optimal band. And I think we haven't gone beyond the upper limit of the band.
And it doesn't look like it's only for the pound. It's also for the euro too.
Yeah. You know, the European Union and the whole European system. And
you seem to be interested in blaming every person apart from we who are doing the major importation, who are actually...
No, I haven't said that. I said the exchange rate is exposed to a lot of factors.
Yes.
You know, and the exogenous factors, the ones beyond our control, are also there. But I wouldn't want to be those blaming the depreciation of the local currency on something else. We need to find solutions to our problems. The external factors may come, but we can develop shock absorbers, you understand? And so if, as a country, we are able to develop a lot of shock absorbers, and this year I don't expect to see so much depreciation because we have so much international reserve that goes into even 4.1 months of import cover. And that more or less operates like a shock absorber and a cushion against our local currency in terms of its trading with the international currencies. And so we need to find our own solutions to that. The external issues will be coming, and we cannot also discuss this without discussing the external issues or factors that affect our local currency. And so we need to put that in perspective. It is not as if we are trying to shift the blame onto something. Like this one district, one factor, and a whole lot of things. If they're able to come on stream, we are able to export more and get a lot of foreign exchange to help us. If we're able to boost our local capital markets, you understand, then portfolio balance theory suggests that if you have a strong local bourse, it's able to attract foreign capital. And as the foreign capital comes into the economy, it has some valuation effect on the domestic currency. All of these are things that we need to do. And I think government is in the process of making sure that we boost our local market, we empower our trading exporters to export more, we produce more and export, we get enough foreign exchange, so that there wouldn't be pressure on the dollar. If you're able to do so, and we are also trying to talk to China to see whether or not we can have some currency swap arrangement, whereby Ghanaians who go to China to trade will not have to change the cedis into the dollar, and then the yuan will be made available through Bank of Ghana and all of that. All of that will lessen the pressure on the exchange rate. And as we came in, the net open positions that the banks used not to comply with, government made sure that that compliance is there, because that was also a factor in the early days of 2017 that led to a depreciation. And the net open position is basically the amount of foreign currencies that the banks can hold as a percentage of their total mobilizations. And the banks were holding more than that. And what it means is that if you don't comply with the net open positions, the banks more or less were hoarding the foreign currency. And once you hoard it and you don't release it to the market, people will not have access to it. There will be demand pressures on the currency, and that will shoot the depreciation of the local currency. And so they ought to be compliant. Government of Ghana did all of that. So we put a lot of measures in place.
The economic sector. We also talk about the social sector. We will talk about a project that's being spearheaded from your office. That is the National Identification System, registration of businesses, and all of these related factors after this break. You welcome back. This is Upfront. Today, we're looking at the president's press encounter with the big media people in this republic and the many questions that were asked him. How did they perform against these questions? And we're also asking, how has the first year of the Akufo-Addo administration been for you? And that's the crux of his engagement with the people today at the media encounter. My guest is Dr. Gideon Boako. He speaks for the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. He's a big man. And we started from having an appreciable understanding. That office is in charge of the economic management team, so the economics stats for them very important. And he's an economist too. We're moving to the other sectors of the economy. We're moving beyond the real economy to actually have a conversation on the other sectors. Now, the president made mention of, and that question came in first, when the president was asked about one thing that he has said consistently, how we're going to use the Ghana Post GPS to aid us do national ID, fresh cards. He got his own, but looks like the rest of this republic are not getting their own anytime soon. The president's response to some extent was that there is a slight difficulty and LI ought to be properly rearranged for it to be brought back on stream. Now, do we know when we will be starting the registration so that Ghanaians can get and use a national ID? Because we were promised November 20, which never materialized.
Yeah, so this whole national ID, digital property addressing system, e-procurement, e-registration, and all of that, government is working at all of this on a purpose, or for a purpose. And so this is very dear to the heart of the president and government, and we would have wished that by now every Ghanaian has his or her national ID, and the POS system is quite robust. The digital addressing property system is quite working very well. But of course, in the implementation, the agencies responsible for that will have to put the governance framework in place such that you don't implement something and a year or two something comes up and invalidates the whole thing, or the process is not able to leave the test of time. And so with respect to the national ID system, we were committed to ensuring that by the close of last year, we would have started a national ID. In fact, we kept to certain targets, the deadlines, and when the deadline was due, the president was issued with the first national ID, but it appears that the president will have to even go for another national ID because some of the features that consultations and discussions have brought on board will have to be captured, and the president was not captured at that time. And you know, we live in the digital world where the evolution of the digital system is quite rapid and it moves so fast. And so you do something today, if you don't plan ahead of time, tomorrow that thing becomes anachronistic and obsolete. You need to update it and all of that. And so that is what has been happening. But particularly with the national ID, it got to a point where there ought to be an LLI, I think, to back it. I'm not a legal luminary, so I don't understand the whole system. And so the understanding that both the minority and the majority have come to, and people in government have come to, is that there ought to be an LI that should be passed by Parliament to make sure that the national identification system, when it comes into play, will have the backing of the law. And so government hurriedly had to put the LI together and submit to Parliament. When it gets to Parliament, it ought to go through a process for 21 days to allow for it to mature. And so the 21 days has passed and it has matured. We're then waiting for the Parliament to resume its formal session, and Parliament will pass that. And I'm sure maybe by next month, Parliament is resuming next week or next 2 weeks. So by next month, the LI will be passed. And once the LI is passed, then whatever needs to go through will go through, and then they will start the process. I've had preliminary discussions with the people in charge of the National Identification Authority, and of course you said that it is spearheaded by the Office of the Vice President. It is not under the auspices of the Vice President. The National Identification Authority is under the Ministry of Monitoring and Evaluation, but of course the Vice President is leading the digital age and agenda in the country, and it's also dear to his heart. So you're not wrong to say that. And so we're trying to make sure that we try to whip where we have to whip, and make sure the National Identification Authority lives up to expectation and gives Ghanaians the national ID. The good thing about this national ID is that it's digital in nature and it captures a lot of information that we will need. So tomorrow, once you get a national ID, you go to anywhere, you swipe it, or just at a gunshot, it brings out your details, your features, everything. You can use it for bank transaction, everything. You can even travel with it. You may not need to have a passport. Once you have a national ID, everything moves. And this time around, you're not going to register for you to be asked to go home and come for your card later. Instantly, as soon as you register, you'll be issued a card.
We're still unclear when we are going to start this.
Yeah, so, but the most important thing is that,
because it's dependent on so many processes that are outside the control.
Yes, we need speed. We need to expedite action on it. But we also ought to be careful to make sure that...
Is there a targeted month?
Yeah, I mean, for us as a government, we have exceeded when we wanted the thing to be done.
Yes,
and the president is so passionate about it that, hey, you need to get this thing going.
So what's the
clear communication. So let's get to Parliament. Let's get Parliament to pass this. And I've been told off record that the national ID will be issued within this quarter.
First quarter of 2018.
Exactly.
Anyway, but with link to that is interoperability. That word is...
I hope you will save me if I'm not able to pronounce it so fast.
Okay, so the interoperability of mobile platforms. Yeah. That particular issue was very important to many because, I mean, now they either cannot do it or have to be charged very exorbitant prices to actually use other platforms to do that. What is the status of this particular project? It was also one thing that we were told consistently was going to be finished by the end of the year.
Yeah, so if I want to follow you, the interoperability.
Yes.
It's correct, right?
Yeah, it is.
So the interoperability of payment systems is also something that dear to government, and the Vice President leading the digital agenda is also keen about it. It's part of the financial inclusion and the formalization of the economic processes that we're going to go through. The interoperable payment system between the banks, mobile money operators, financial sectors has a lot of advantages to the country. Just yesterday, as if I knew I was going to be asked this, I had a briefing on the interoperable payment system. In fact,
it's not happened yet.
In fact, at the economic management team.
When is it going to happen?
Those in charge were summoned to brief the economic management team. I can tell you this yesterday on this. The key inhibiting factor now is the merger between Airtel and Tigo. Now,
but that's done.
No, once those two telcos merge, the technical processes ought to capture that merger. You understand? Airtel was treated differently. Tigo was treated differently. Now they have been merged. Okay. And so the technical guys are saying that they needed to take time to make sure that they all redo the technical processes to capture the new company that have been created and all the issues that had to be put in place. The other thing that they were also working on was the governance framework for the whole thing. They have done everything, and they told us yesterday that I think there's a document that they are submitting tomorrow or today, and once that is done, the interoperable system for them, they also gave a deadline, but I'm not the person to put that deadline out. And so very soon that will also kickstart. But the key,
very soon as in when?
Yes, but the key inhibiting factor, I think, was the merger, which came latter part.
So do we know when it's going to come on board?
Yes, you can place a call to those in charge, and they will be able to tell you.
No.
There's a whole agency under Bank of Ghana supervision.
I get you,
that are in charge. I am not.
But I have heard the Vice President say consistently that he's importantly interested in that particular project.
That is why
he's following keenly. He promised end of year 2017, and we are in 2018.
The fact that I told you that yesterday, those working on the interoperable payment system were summoned to the economic management team to brief the economic management team on where they have. It tells you how serious government takes this. And so the Vice President constantly have been calling, asking for, pushing people, do this, do that. And as the Vice President, I tell you, he's been keen about some of these innovations. And yesterday, we had to take a whole presentation, a whole brief on where they have got into with the interoperable payment system, and then how fast we can get it done. You know, the Vice President is coming from the banking sector, and he is so passionate about this. He wants it done. But of course, there are people in charge, you and myself, our fathers, our uncles, and our mothers, who are in charge, who are also passionate about it, just as you are. And I think I think that this is not something that, if it can be done today, if it can be done today, they wouldn't do it.
First quarter.
Nobody sits on this for any gain.
Second quarter.
I will not be able to say, but I can tell you that, I mean, yesterday we asked the relevant questions, and the answers they provided.
Which answer did they give you on the date?
The answer they provided, we are satisfied with it. And then I know, we take it that.
I mean, you've been bold enough to tell me that
take it that you
will come on board.
Take it that you were me at the meeting yesterday.
Yes.
I served your interest.
Yes.
You understand? And I was satisfied with the answer. So take it that you are satisfied with the answers they provided.
Just I still don't have a date for me.
Yes, but of course, I am not the one to put the date out.
They've not asked you to put it out there?
No, I don't
because we are unsure of the date.
I'm privy to a lot of, let's say...
They've told you not to say it. Is that what you're saying?
There are a lot of things I'm privy to. Once I don't have the power to say it, I can't say it.
Okay, but let me then ask you about a related event, because all of this fits into, you know, the plan to do e-registration of businesses.
Yeah.
The people are complaining bitterly that it is never operational. All the attempts to get it to work the way they ought to work, and this one other thing that we're told was supposed to be very dear to the heart of the Vice President. Is that what's happening to the quest to do registration? Yeah,
so that one too, I think in the latter part, just after Christmas, there were a series of meetings with the Registrar General, and I'm telling you this because on daily basis, Vice President is making calls, working on this. If I tell you how passionate he is about these things, but implementing the agencies.
Yes, we want the passion to translate into action.
So from our side as a government, we are doing our best. But those who are putting the actions in place, they also need to go through their processes. The key thing that we have interrogated and we have asked for some redefinition and reformalization. The key thing on as an impediment on the e-business registration is the TIN number.
I have a TIN number.
No,
it's not difficult getting TIN numbers.
It is not everybody.
Yeah.
And the system requires
but if you want
that.
A TIN number, you go to the GRA for a TIN number.
It is not as you think. The system requires that.
Really?
No, I understand, but the system requires that whoever is registering a business, if you have 8 directors, all of them must have a TIN number. So you go to the Registrar General's portal and you want to register, they will ask you to produce your TIN number first. If you don't have the TIN number, there is no interface.
Okay,
between
so those who
Ghana,
don't know TIN number is a tax identification number.
There is no interface between Ghana Revenue Authority and the Registrar General's portal.
Okay.
For you to be able to register and get a TIN number instantly. There's no interface. So you then have to go and apply for the TIN number manually, and we have said no. Government says no. We can't ask people to be going through that. Find a way to ensure that the Ghana Revenue Authority and the Registrar General's Department have an interface that allows people, by sitting on their computer, be able to get the TIN number. Then there is another issue of validation of identity. Now we don't have the national ID in place. And so if you are registering, they are unable to validate your identity to say that this is Raymond. If you go to Rwanda, and we have tried from the officer, we have tried because we wanted to educate ourselves to understand. If we want to register a business in Rwanda, you can sit here and do it within few hours. And once you scan your passport and upload it, they don't ask you for any validation that they register you. And later on, when you have to get your things processed, then they'll go do that validation. And so we are saying that that process of validation, that does not allow people to upload, to scan their passports and automatically it is validated, because it is not everybody who has traveled before. And so once you haven't traveled before, they don't have your fingerprints and your passport scanned in the immigration service. So it is quite difficult to determine who is a Ghanaian and who is not a Ghanaian registering a business. And so these are some of the shortfalls we have identified. Remember, Imani also came up with some of the criticisms.
Yes, they complained about
that. The government took it on board to run it through with the Registrar General that these are complaints by a section of Ghanaians. We want answers from this. And so
when will be up and operating?
They are really working on it. And so there has been a committee that has been set up.
You know, a demand for a date.
Yeah, but I'm not the one to put out. There's a committee that has been set up to make sure that they iron out all this. Critical amongst them is linking the Ghana Revenue Authority portal without a Registrar General to make sure that we have an interface that allows people to generate the TIN number, and the process should move smoothly. So once I'm able to give you this, it tells you that there have been constant meetings from our side as a Ghana central government to make sure that all these processes work. But of course, I can understand the Herculean task at the Registrar General's Department trying to get all these sorted. They are doing so well, and we want to urge them and congratulate them, but ask them to do more to make sure that the processes improve. It all feeds into our ease of doing business indicators as measured by the World Bank. Yeah. And so we need to work assiduously and expeditiously to make sure that we improve the system and get it to the level that we want. That will improve the score of Ghana. And
there's this important question, and this question probably did not come up then. The question to do with whether or not currently, as I speak to you, we can be bold enough as a state and say that we achieved our revenue target for 2017.
Yeah, you see, the final revenue figures are not out.
Yes, I know.
But first and foremost, we need to place into context that government set up very ambitious revenue targets in 2017.
Yes, it was not compelled to do so.
It was very, very ambitious. Raymond, when the figures come out, and you will see the revenue performance for 2017, all of us will be shocked. The gap is very, very small.
What percentage is that?
No, that's why I'm saying that it is preliminary figures that I'm not allowed. You understand? I don't have the liberty.
It's less than 5%.
And to put out. And so I would say that we did so well, because if you had stayed within the normal percentage of GDP, like 24, 25, 20% of this one was even some over 30% of GDP target. So that was very, very ambitious. But I can tell you, the Ghana Revenue Authority, Mr. Kofinti, the commissioner, and the workers there, I congratulate them, and the people of Ghana for owning up to say that, hey, government is giving us free SHS, government is paying teachers arrears, nursing allowances. Let us also contribute a bit towards development.
There's a question
so the
which
people of this country
also
have done
became
so well.
some, I mean, people were still wondering what the real answer to that question was. What is being done to aid the importers and exporters at the port who are complaining bitterly about very high charges? They say that all of the purported tax removers did not inure to their benefit, especially even spare parts dealers.
Yeah, so you see, when you and I were young, we used to hear, hey, Ghana ports corruption. Ghana ports corruption. Then I asked my uncle, why did they say, oh, ports there, that is what happens there. President Mills, when he became president, was alarmed at the developments at the Ghana ports. Remember the interview he went there, when he went for a visit and had an interview, and he spoke so passionately.
Yeah.
So he also came into power and realized that the port operations ought to be modernized, bring a lot more of technology, do away with the numerous
technology makes it more effective.
Human interface and all of that.
Yes.
But in so doing,
yes,
it will affect some people, not because government had bad intention. Yes, we have listened to the concerns. A lot of people, I have friends who clear things from the port. They say, hey, Charlie, there's paperless system. It is increasing the prices. But the question I've been asking, for which I have not gotten satisfactory answer, is that have the charges and the duties that used to be at the port been increased?
They say so.
They say no.
Really?
Yeah.
Those are spoken to.
They said the charges, you know, the SI duty, and they are percentages of something. The percentages they say have not increased. So there have not been percentage increases. So I asked them, why are you then paying so huge? And some of them confided, oh, the thing is that in the past, if I had to pay 10 million and I could see an agent who would just come and say, oh, pay 6 million and tip me 2 million, the remaining 2 million, just take it.
Sure.
Some of them, I'm not saying all of them.
Yeah.
Some of them used to tell them. I'm not saying that is the situation for everybody. But some of them also think that...
Is there anything being done to make sure that the cost is reduced?
Yes. Government is seriously working. We have been engaging the importers because, look, they are our people. And they bring the foreign exchange. And they bring the things you and I need that we cannot get in this country. So they ought to be respected. So we have been engaging them. But we're also working on the paperless system. In fact, the paperless system, if it becomes fully efficient, will bring down the cost hugely. And I think that is the way we need to go. The concerns are genuine. We thank them for airing their views in an orderly manner, and I can promise them, as we've been engaging their leadership and some of them individually, government is doing everything to make sure that that situation is mitigated. And once it is mitigated, things will normalize and everybody will be happy.
Well, folks, that's where we end today's edition of UpFront. My guest has been Dr. Gideon Boako. He speaks for the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. And the conversation has been on the media encounter the President had earlier today with the men and women from the Inky fraternity. Thanks for watching.